It is now just after 7. We're going to get started with the regular session of the Hemet City Council meeting. Sarah, can I have a roll call? Here.
Here. Here. Mayor Meyer. Here. Mayor
Here. And if I could get the audience to kind of bring it down to a no roar. Thank you. Okay, up first we have the invocation and then the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could please stand for the invocation being done by Bill Heller of the Hemet Center Interfaith.
Good evening. In this moment now, I would ask that you take a moment to simply focus on the presence and the love of God within each one of you. We know that you are never alone, never apart. Gratefully, we know as well, you are here to make a contribution. We know that with an open heart and open mind, you will have the answers you need in any given moment. We accept this and we give thanks. And so it is. Amen.
Put your hand over your heart. Please salute the flag with me. Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Give everybody just a second to get seated. Up first, we have our city attorney reports. The city attorney.
The City Council met on 3 of the 4 closed session items, and there's no reportable action. The 4th item will be continued to the end of the regular agenda.
Thank you. Moving along is the consent calendar. These are items that are routine in nature and take one motion and one vote of the council. Sarah, is there anybody from the public that wishes to pull anything?
No.
Any staff? Okay, any from the council?
15.
13 and 14.
Yeah.
Any others?
Maybe number 10.
Number 10. Okay, so 10, 13, and 14. All right. Is there a motion to approve the remainder of the consent? Is there a second?
Second.
All right, please vote.
We can't hear you.
Can you turn me my microphone? Can you hear me now? Sort of. Can you hear me now? Is that better? Okay. All right. So that passes 5-0. Item number 10.
Okay, so this is... Hold on, my mic is on. This is the Hemet Community Land Trust and the property on Mayberry. And I was just wondering if you guys could explain, right, did you and Linda, are you guys on that?
Yes, Linda. Go into detail on that.
Okay. The short version of this is that several years ago there was a program by HUD called Neighborhood Stabilization Program. And through the federal funding, it was right after the Great Recession, and a lot of homes were in foreclosure and a lot of them were being abandoned. With funds from HUD, the city was able to buy up some properties, have them refurnished, rehabbed, whatever, and then in turn sell them. This was one of those properties at 107 East Mayberry, and it is the last remaining property that is actually owned that we need to divest ourselves of to close out the NSP program. I will add that program, I think there were 2 or 3 phases to it. The city of Hemet really used all of the funds to probably 5 or 6 times rolling because of the agreement we had with local contractors who would go in and rehabilitate the structures and then sell them on the open market. They would recoup their expenses. The rest would go back into the NSP funding, and it would continue to roll to basically fix up neighborhoods in our city. And this is the last remaining property that we need to act on to close out the last of the NSP funding.
Okay. Let's see. So when we say that we're going to deed it to the Hemet Community Land Trust, who is that?
The Hemet Community Land Trust is a nonprofit that was set up several years ago as a holding agency, but also as a buying entity. And Erica, you may have to help me on this with the legal issues. In the same type of program before the NSP funding came along. And there were several properties, in particular, the ones that were on then Timothy Lane, which then got changed to Mobley Lane and is now Greystone. And in the process through that, that whole neighborhood has been rehabbed, and that particular nonprofit was a holding agency. It is made up of 2 members of City Council and up to 5 members of the public at large, so it is not a city-controlled per se. It's a nonprofit for holding these things, and at this point, there's discussion, haven't decided exactly how we're going to wind that up, or if sometime in the near future that entity with public support could become a viable entity again for rehabbing neighborhoods.
Okay, so my question partly is, I mean, like gifting public funds, giving away, I mean, you know, we're trying to keep our budget balanced, and so.
These are restricted use funds, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lorena, but this is not a grant program that the federal government's offering anymore, and so the city needs to close out the program, and so under the federal guidelines, the funds have to be used for one of their permissible purposes. It's called their national objectives. Under these federal grant programs, you can grant money to further those national objectives, which in this case is low and moderate income housing. So the grant of funds is not a legal problem whatsoever. It's actually expressly authorized by the HUD guidelines, and HUD is encouraging it in this case so that the program can be closed out.
And I noticed in the staff report you guys talk about, you know, possible Habitat for Humanity or some, yeah, okay. All right, that's just I wanted to make sure it was clear. Thank you. All right, I'll move to approve number 10.
And I'll second that. Please vote. All right, that number 10 passes 5-0. Number 13.
Here we go again.
Good evening, Council.
You know, anytime we look at these high dollar purchases, it's always of concern. Through our conversation, I am pleased that the department did look for external funding to try and supplement this purchase. So I'm very pleased about that.
Thank you.
But give me an idea of the process here and how long it takes to where we have to obligate the funds, and how long it takes to get the unit, and so forth.
Sure. So the combination unit that we're talking about is a jet vacuum unit, dual function, and is used by 3 of our crews. Right now we've got 3 crews. The way I kind of put it, we've got 3 people with rakes and 1 guy with a shovel. So when we're raking stuff up, we have to keep borrowing units to help out to remove things. So the lead time on these vehicles, they are very large, is about 12 to 14 months. And in terms of what our obligation is, obligating the funding, at this point what would happen, approval of this item would allow us to go ahead and establish a purchase order. We would order the vehicle. We don't pay for that vehicle until we received it, inspected it, and have signed off on it. So we really, while we're obligating the funds today for the purchase order, we're really not writing the check until we receive that vehicle, which at this point would probably be sometime in late 2019.
And from what I understand by the staff report, no general fund
Absolutely no general fund. We have equipment replacement funds. Again, we have a vehicle here that is old enough to vote, plus some, that we will be getting rid of. And we actually did take one of our other not quite so old vehicles and did some repairs to it to keep it into service longer. This one, though, in particular, is funded strictly through our equipment replacement funds that we've set aside in both sewer and storm drain, as well as some of our AQMD subvention funds that the city receives. While we would love to have used the subvention funds for the entire purchase, we're only allowed to use on these types of vehicles the funding that is the difference between a diesel vehicle and a CNG vehicle, which is about $60,000. We had already set aside 30. We're adding a little bit more. Zero general fund dollars for this vehicle purchase, and we've been planning for it for a decade. So,
Okay, the only thing I ask is as funding opportunities come up this next year, that we look into, if eligible, we look into applying either through Cara Moyer or
MSRC or absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I'm going to have to make a comment. After we just passed our budget, I don't care if this comes out of other funds or not. It's just insane that we're doing this. Just saying.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. What do you guys want to do with this one?
I'll move approval.
Okay, that passes 3-2.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Up next, item 14.
Okay. Why weren't my question? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, we're on 14.
I'd like to know why the soft costs that are normally included in the total project cost weren't included in this initially.
So you're talking in terms of the contingency piece, or?
I'm talking in terms of everything but the construction, the actual construction of it. We have an indirect cost, any of the soft costs.
So initially, when we brought this to council and had the initial 1.5 approved, we weren't sure what the construction costs would be. We were hopeful that the soft costs and everything, that we would get those numbers and that they would fall within that. When the construction came back, that is when, and we had the time to kind of go back and look and get some quotes for the things like the abatement costs and whatnot. That is why we brought them forward now. The only thing that we had at the time when we were trying to establish a budget for it initially was the cost of the architect design and the project management based on the information we had at the time.
Well, my concern is I look at project budgets all the time, and our engineers would be strung up if they provided a budget and a total project cost that didn't include all the costs. So I was pretty surprised by that. And I think in the future, we need to make sure that that budget is a true statement on every level.
Up front, yes. And I apologize. We had ideas of what those costs would be, but we weren't sure. We hadn't gotten true quotes yet. We were kind of going off of our experience, so we wanted to get some real numbers before we put them out there. So,
Not the way to propose a budget.
understood.
The other thing is, too, I was looking at the contingency of $85,000. Most contingencies are 10%.
Which would be much higher than what we have here.
Right.
We really went through a grueling process in terms of the design and the development of the specifications. I don't know if George is here, our architect, but he would tell you that we have really very tight specifications and plans. So yes, this is a lower amount than you would normally see. We did need some amount, but we think that this will be more than enough. There is also within the construction amount of 1.7, there's also $50,000 for field orders. So basically what that means is if we tear open walls and we find something we weren't expecting, we have that capacity built in there to be able to authorize small change orders as we go along. It is a lot less than you would normally see, but we're confident that this will suffice.
Well, and I'm hoping that we don't see those change orders coming down the pike that are more than a little bit, because we all know how that happens. I might have another question. Does anybody else have anything to add, to ask?
Chief, did you want to comment about the change orders and everything that went into the design and planning of this to minimize those?
Well, one thing we're hoping to minimize the change orders is that we're going to have a contract manager that's going to monitor the building project the entire time. So we've learned from past projects that it's much easier to have someone right there monitoring the project the entire time. So that's why some of the cost for project management seems a little high, but we feel that it will outweigh the benefit of having someone here full-time during the project.
Okay. Then I'll open Pandora's box. In your opinion, does any of this qualify for using Measure U funding? Since I would think some of this expansion or whatever is due to the fact that we have more police officers now than we have had in past years?
I think if you look at the language that was passed, it probably would fall within that. And we were lucky enough to find many of our DIF funds that hadn't been used in years that were able to use those funds at this current time. But to answer your question, I believe that would be within the scope of that, yes.
Well, I was just thinking in some of this, if we're taking funds out of, general facilities DIF, that maybe in the long run we should be looking at a percentage that would come out of the Measure U funding for the new officers who have come on board. Just a suggestion.
That would be your prerogative.
Then we will look at that. Thank you.
Well, I had the occasion to take a little tour of the facility. I appreciate that guided tour. A couple of us on council had that opportunity. And I must say, from my perspective, desperately needed, long overdue. I believe you said that our police department facility is the oldest operating police facility in Riverside County.
That is correct.
I would say it's probably in a larger area than Riverside County.
Very well may be.
I did have the opportunity to have some firsthand experience in my former job, in my former department, and it is an incredibly challenging undertaking to do a project like this in a 24/7 operation. It compounds it exponentially because you can't just move off-site to another location and do all the remodeling that you need to do and then move back in. You've got to do it on the fly, and I think it's incredibly important to have a project manager who really knows the job and knows what's involved above and beyond the person that is assigned from the police department to do that. I had that role. I was a project manager on a couple of projects in my former department, and it was very, very challenging, and I was probably working above my pay grade on some of the components of that, and it really would have been helpful to have a person with the right kind of knowledge assisting me with that. So I know it's a big price tag, but it is desperately needed, and if we want to really be an attractive enticement for a lateral transfer to want to come work for our department, one of the first things they're going to do is take a look around the department. And you want to have a department that you're proud to show off. So I have heartburn over the cost of this, but I know that it's desperately needed and for all the right reasons. So.
Thank you. I wish I could say it was going to be something flashy and really exorbitant, but it's not. It's removing lead-based paint and asbestos and, trying to fix some of the things that really need to be looked at. We'll try to clean the air ducts.
Cleaning the air ducts is not in the budget this year.
Is there any way that, well, first of all, what's the time frame for the project? Can't remember.
Yeah, we're hoping to keep it under about 14 months. We're doing it actually in 4 phases, so each phase will be a little different.
That's what I was going to ask about the phases.
It's going to be very disruptive. So as you can imagine, we're going to basically lock off one part of our police department. They're going to come in and do the construction there. Then we'll move people to other locations. We'll move them back to the part that was just done. So it's going to be very disruptive for about a year.
So it's on reimbursement costs. So you do this phase, pay for that phase, or are you paying for it at the end of the project? Do you pay for it during the project? How is that done?
It's a phased billing. So as they complete portions or portions of phases, they will submit, and we will make payment on those invoices. So.
Okay.
Should this be approved tonight? When are you starting?
Got it? Okay. So if it is approved tonight, what will happen is we will give a 10-day notice to the contractor. So we will see the start in August.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments?
Back to the cost. Excuse me. Is this is guaranteed maximum pricing? I just need to know that.
We are confident that this covers everything. Absolutely. And in terms of the construction, yes, that is the not to exceed amount for all 4 phases.
Because they're really good at bringing back amendments. That's right. I understand that it really needs to be done, but all right.
So you heard it here. No amendments.
Loud and clear.
Honest to God, cut back on something. Don't come back with more money.
All right. Any other comments, questions? Anybody want to?
Move approval of item 14.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Okay. Then please vote.
Thank you, Council.
All right. Thank you. No, not yet. Real quick before we move on, one of the items that was passed in the consent calendar was item number 6, which was a recommendation that I made to the library board. Kathy, did you want to introduce?
Hey, thank you, Council, very much for approving Trustee Kobe. This is her first complete term. She's been a wonderful asset to us, and we thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor, first of all, for nominating me.
You're very welcome, and thank you for the time and effort you put into the library.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Okay. All right, moving along. The next up is communication from the public. This is the opportunity that anybody that wishes to address the council on an item that's not on the agenda can do so this time. Sarah, do you have anybody that wants to?
Yes, you have 2 speakers, Donald Park, and he'll be followed by Tammy Radonsky.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Donald Park, and I live at 311 Via Capri here in wonderful Hemet. On May 9th of 2017, I wrote the following letter to Chief Brown. I am writing to ask that you direct some attention to traffic noise and vehicle speeds in the area near Coston and Devonshire. My house is situated very close to the corner of Via Capri and Devonshire. Thus, I am very aware of the traffic noise on Devonshire. All day and all night, I can hear vehicles traveling at a very high rate of speed on Devonshire. I would venture to say that at least 20 to 30 miles per hour above the speed limit, may be faster, especially between the hours of 0600 to 0800 when folks are going to work, and from 1600 to 1900 when those same folks are returning from work. Can you periodically direct some of your extremely scarce officer resources to the aforementioned area for the purpose of traffic enforcement? I fear that sooner or later a driver will lose control of his or her vehicle and crash into a home or the fire station. Throughout every day and night, my wife and I and our neighbors are subjected to the extremely loud noise of vehicles using Devonshire or Coston. These vehicles, and there are plenty of them, cannot possibly be in compliance with California Vehicle Code Section 27150A, which I'm sure you're aware states every motor vehicle subject to registration shall at all times be equipped with an adequate muffler in constant operation and properly maintained to prevent any excessive or unusual noise, and no muffler or exhaust system shall be equipped with a cutout, bypass, or similar device. In addition to citing drivers using excessive speed, please ask your officers to also cite persons whose vehicles violate the above code section. Thank you, Chief Brown, and please keep up the fine work that you and your officers are doing in cleaning up this town. On May 22nd of this year, I wrote the same letter to Chief Webb. I received no response from Chief Brown, and I've received no response or enforcement from Chief Webb. On June 19th of this year, I wrote to your office, Mr. Mayor, and I asked for you to intervene. It's a month later, still haven't heard anything. What more do you want me to do? This town is crazy. There's people running into telephone poles, crashing into people's houses. I subscribe to Hemet Valley Incidents, and 3 or 4 times a day there's a crash in the city. People just ignore traffic regulations and just drive as they feel necessary. It's ironic that this individual, this gentleman that ran down Mr. Billings on Sunday night in that horrific crash, I learned that he is one of the people that race up and down Coston quite frequently. One of my neighbors let me know about that. And it's kind of ironic when you think that perhaps, maybe, if we had some enforcement in that area for these speeders, and the fact that I understand that also he was a wanted parolee, maybe if he'd been stopped for speeding one night,
Thank you, sir. Your time is...
that wouldn't have happened on Sunday night. So that's all I'm asking for,
Yes.
is a little bit
Thank
of
you, sir.
enforcement.
If you could, the police chief's back there, maybe have a conversation with him, and we'll make sure that our traffic enforcement,
Thank you
which
very
is
much.
very limited, but be aware that these things go on in every city, not just Hemet.
Yeah, the morons are out there.
Yes, they are. Okay, up next, Tammy.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I just wanted to say thank you to Sue Savage and also to the people that are in positions of authority to look at finances. And one thing I would just like to remind people, it's not just people who are in their offices that make the financial decisions for our city, and it shouldn't be that way. And thank goodness for people who have the strength and the determination to know where our money is going. So I too would like to recommend that Sue Savage be considered to look at our finances, because thank goodness for people that look after our money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. no more communications from the public, up next is our first public hearing item, item number 15, engineer's report and levy of collection of assessment for formation of the City of Hemet Landscape Maintenance District. Good evening again.
Okay, good evening, Council. So tonight we have the public hearing for the formation of a streetlight maintenance district as well as a landscape maintenance district for District 107, also known as the Marana Development. This is located on the corner of San Jacinto and Johnston. It is 8 parcels, and we were here in May to have resolutions approved to initiate this process. This timing is a little bit off because we are in fact establishing the formation of the district now, but it will not be assessed until the 1920 assessment year. This development has been kind of in process for a long time. Like many of the developers during the recession, things slowed down. Things are starting to pick back up now, and one of the conditions of approval for them to be able to move forward in developing these lots is to have the streetlight district and the landscape district formed. So we did go ahead and send out our ballots for both districts. I believe that the city clerk has those ballots. What we need you to do is go ahead and open a public hearing to take comments from the public, any input. Close that public hearing after addressing any items we need to address, and then we will need a count of the ballots from the city clerk to find out if we have a majority in each of those districts, whether they are affirming or opposing the formation of the district. So,
Okay. That's all you have. All right.
that's it.
Okay. So this is a public hearing item, so I will open the public hearing on this item. Is there anybody that wishes to speak in favor or against the proposed assessment for this district, these 2 districts? Don't all rush the mic at once. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. And Sarah, you have some ballots that you need to open for us.
in support of Streetlight Maintenance District 107.
So if I may, Council, while Sarah's finishing up, because it is 8 parcels and it is a majority, we are looking for 5 votes in support of each of the LMDs. So. So I'm sorry, I thought
Sorry.
landscape.
Landscape Maintenance District 107 has 6 in support. Streetlight Maintenance District 107 has 5 in support.
And 0 in opposition.
And 0 in opposition for both.
So in terms of the recommendation then, council, because the tally of the ballots received indicates a majority affirmative for the proposed districts, we would be looking to adopt a resolution, bill number 18-064 and 18-065 for the formation of those 2 districts.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for staff? Okay. Anybody want to make a motion so we can move this one along? There's a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. All right. Please vote.
Thank you, council, and I know Mr. Morano will be very happy to know that his districts are formed and he can start doing some building for us. So.
More home building is good. All right, very good. Okay, up next, item number 16 is the appeal of number 18001 regarding the Planning Commission approval of the Rancho Mulholland project. And with that, I need to recuse because this is in close proximity to my residence.
All right, since this public hearing was already open last meeting, we will continue and start with our staff report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the Appeal 18-001 for the Rancho Mulholland project. Oops. Okay, we're not advancing. The property owner is Micrometer Incorporated, as well as the Holland Family Trust. There are 2 different existing parcels. The applicant is Mark Cooper of Rancho Mulholland. The project location is at the southeast corner of Sanderson and Stetson Avenue. The site area, the total site area is 8.74 acres, and the applications that have been filed is a tentative parcel map 37421 and conditional use permit 17-004. The appellant is, the appeal was filed on May 24th following the approval by the Planning Commission. The appellant is Concerned Citizens of Hemet, and that is represented by Maria Cassian of the AGA Group and Everett Delano of the law firm of Delano and Delano. So what this shows you is an aerial to kind of get you oriented. This is Stetson, here's Sanderson. This is the project site. So right here is the existing kind of dirt parking lot. This is the Micrometer existing industrial facility. This is the vacant lot where the new parking lot here will be relocated and improved. Surrounding it, this is Page Plaza, where the Walmart's further over here. You have the Walgreens on the corner, Union 76 station, Farmer Boys, etc. This is the Willowwalk neighborhood here, Seven Hills further to the east. This is Terra Linda to the north, and this is the Stetson Crossing specific plan, the property owned by the city. This just shows you a close-up of what I was just describing of the existing project site. The conditional use permit, as we get into a little bit of the diagrams here, is essentially encompassing about this area here. It's about 2.27 acres of the total project site. The general plan for the site is business park, and the zoning, as shown in the purple there, is M1 limited manufacturing. The tentative parcel map is the subdivision of those 2 existing parcels into 4 parcels and 2 lettered lot for landscape purposes. As I mentioned, it includes the relocation of the existing Micrometer parking lot from the west side at the corner to the far east side, which would become parcel 4. And then the conditional use permit is 2 components. One is to construct and operate a 24-hour 7-Eleven convenience store, also having a Type 20 beer and wine ABC license, a
a 12-pump gas station, and then secondarily a 3,590 square foot Quick Quack Express car wash with vacuum islands. And those two uses would encompass the future parcels 1 and 2 at the corner. So here's the tentative parcel map. This is parcel 1. This is where the 7-Eleven would go. This is parcel 2, where the Quick Quack would go. The existing micrometer facility is not affected by this application. And then this is parcel 4, where the new parking lot for the micrometer employees would be located. This is a close-up of the site plan that I just described. Illustrative. These are all in your packets. I'm going to go fairly quickly, but please stop me. I know you have a big agenda and a lot of people that want to speak. These are elevations for the proposed 7-Eleven, very consistent with the architecture surrounding the area, including the Page Plaza and other recent developments that have been constructed in the city. This is the 7-Eleven floor plan. The representative of 7-Eleven is here and could elaborate on their operations. The Quick Quack car wash, these are their elevations. They have their signature yellow, as well as complementary colors with the 7-Eleven and with the city's design palette. There's some site photos just showing the intersection. They're a little hard to see. Sorry about that. Did want to point out to you, and I think most of you are familiar with the site, but there is at this corner, and separating from the Willowwalk community, is approximately 16-foot high wall that acts as a buffer between that micrometer property and the vacant lot and the residential development to the south. There's just a couple more. This one here is a view down Stetson Avenue. This will all be improved as part of the project, as will the Sanderson Avenue frontage and the 25-foot setback. There's been extensive public comment regarding this project. We started off with a work study last September with the Planning Commission, which was noticed to 500-foot radius of property owners and tenants. The conditional use permit was filed in November of last year. Between November and when it went to hearing in April of this year, was an extensive time frame in terms of staff review of the project and the preparation of the environmental documents, the technical reports, and the recommended mitigated negative declaration and initial study. There's a public comment period that extended from March 26th to April 14th of this year. At the April 17th meeting, the Planning Commission held the public hearing. There was a number of comments and speakers. They continued the public hearing to the May 15th meeting, and at that point approved the project. Within the 10-day period, an appeal was filed, and then the first City Council hearing, as you know, was scheduled originally for June 26th. However, it was continued to tonight's meeting given the amount of information that came in after the staff report was circulated. So just a little bit about the approval authority. I'm going through this because it's come up in some of the extensive materials you may have looked at. The M1 limited manufacturing zone requires a conditional use permit for service stations with convenience store uses. A similar use determination was made by me, the director, and affirmed by the Planning Commission that the car wash is similar to other vehicle uses allowed in the M1 zone and is also subject to a conditional use permit. The code allows the Planning Commission to approve or conditionally approve or deny applications for tentative tract maps and conditional use permits. And normally that would be the final decision, unless appealed to the City Council, which is what's occurred in this instance. The code also allows the director to permit administrative adjustments up to 20% for setbacks, etc. And an adjustment was granted to allow reduction in the rear landscape setback between Quick Quack and the neighborhood from 30 feet to 24 feet. Just a note on that. It's 30 feet because it's an industrial zone. If it was a commercial zone with the same use, it would be a 10-foot setback. So given the 16-foot wall and the normal setback separation, granted that administrative adjustment. There are detailed findings for approval in the Planning Commission resolutions that are in your packet as attachments 1A, B, and C.
In terms of the alcohol sales, the applicant is requesting a beer and wine license, which is type 20. There are, in our code, additional CUP findings above and beyond what ABC would require, alcoholic beverage control, for alcoholic sales. The staff report and the council resolution incorporate all the required findings for the approval of the alcohol sales. The project meets the required separation distances from residential homes, schools, public parks, and places of worship. And if you have any questions about those distances, I can go over those. According to the ABC, there are 3 off-sale licenses allowed within this particular census tract based on the current population ratios. There are currently no off-sale licenses within this tract. So from an ABC perspective, it's not considered over-concentrated. However, this census tract map and shows here's the project site within this census tract, which extends essentially along Stetson and encompasses all of Seven Hills and further to the east. Then you have this one to the north and this one that has Page Plaza. There are alcoholic beverage licenses within here. The Union 76 has a beer and wine license, as does Walgreens and Walmart. And further, this census tract extends quite a way further north on Sanderson, where there are, at that intersection, additional licenses as well. But from an ABC concentration standpoint, this is how they look at it. In terms of CEQA compliance, an initial study and mitigated negative declaration was prepared. We had a number of technical studies that were prepared in response to concerns that we had raised and wanted looked at. This included light and glare, air quality and greenhouse gas, biological studies, geotechnical, drainage, noise impacts, traffic impacts, and water quality. The mitigation measures are incorporated in the conditions of approval and relate to aesthetics, which is more the lighting, directing the light downward, cultural resources, paleontological hazards and hazardous materials, noise, and traffic. In terms of the CEQA review period, it's the 20-day public review period. As I mentioned, we did receive 4 agency comments from South Coast Air Quality District, Caltrans, Department of Toxic Substances, and Valleywide Recreation. Most of these were pretty much a form letter or very easily responded to. South Coast wanted a little bit more information, which we provided, and there was no further comment from them. There were no public comments received during this period. There were comments, however, received immediately following the close of the comment period. One is from Delano and Delano, the appellate, in opposition to the project, and another Papademos group, which is in regard to acoustic studies and noise, and RK Engineering regarding traffic. Additional comments as the project proceeded through the Planning Commission hearing process was opposition from Tommy's Car Wash, additional letters from Delano and Delano dated May 14th, June 26th, and July 17th, letter from Thomas Zia dated May 14th, RK Engineering regarding traffic, 2 letters, May 15th and June 25th, and a letter from Rancho McCollin, the applicant, dated July 17th. All of these letters are in your packet in this thick mound there. City staff and the environmental consultants have prepared detailed responses to all of the comments. They're included in the staff report and in the attachments that you were provided as part of the packet. It has been staff's determination that no changes to the project are warranted as a result of the comments we've received. In terms of questions that the council may have, staff is certainly available to answer any questions. Also, our environmental consultant, Diane Jenkins, is here in terms of any questions regarding the environmental documents, and the applicant's project team, Mark Coopers, the applicant, Chris Gabriel from 7-Eleven, Efren Corona from Quick Quack, Mike Dickerson, MD Acoustics. Most of the questions in the comments seem to come from the noise and air quality and the traffic study, Scott Sato of Trans-Solution. So if you have questions in regard to any of those technical reports, they are here. In conclusion, just a couple of points in summary. The proposed project, we believe, is essentially an infill project that has been thoroughly analyzed by staff, the environmental consultants, the technical consultants, the city attorney, and the planning commission through the course of 2 public hearings. The project is consistent with the city's general plan and policies, the zoning code, and the development standards. The project meets all of the required findings for conditional use permits, for alcoholic beverage permits, and for subdivision maps. The project has been conditioned to meet all of the city's requirements for new development, including architectural and site design, landscaping enhancements, public infrastructure improvements, and payment of all applicable fees, including development impact fees. The potential environmental impacts of the project have been analyzed by technical experts, and mitigation measures have been added as project conditions to minimize any environmental effects to a level below significance. There's been extensive opportunity for public comment and review of the project, and the city has provided written comments and responses to all the comments raised. The project will replace an unimproved parking lot and underutilized prime intersection within the city of Hemet with a convenient service retail use that will provide increased property and sales tax to the city and add new jobs for local residents. It will also provide a fully improved and expanded parking lot for the Micrometer Industrial Facility employees to utilize. So our recommendation for you tonight is to conduct the public hearing, take public testimony as outlined by the city attorney, I think, and the mayor pro tem, and then adopt resolution bill 18-046 as amended. There is one change to, you do have the updated resolution from your packet. There were 2 things. We did have it updated, it inadvertently didn't get in your latest packet. One was in terms of the dates, updating to today's date, and also there are distance measurements in the Planning Commission resolution for the alcoholic beverage use from residential property line. The original Planning Commission resolution had it from the business itself to the property line, and it's been corrected to property line to property line. It's still consistent with all the code requirements. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time, or wait till you have more.
Council, do you have any questions? I have a question for you.
Yes.
This was so thorough. You guys forgot one thing. Maybe I shouldn't ask it yet. I'm just going to have to ask it now. There's nothing in there about, like, public safety. Are there any requirements for that? Or
there are requirements. There are
security
requirements.
guards?
Yes. And 7-Eleven could probably address that, and I think intends to address it as part of their presentation. But this project, as with all projects, does get reviewed by our development review staff, including the police department. There are conditions of approval regarding security cameras as well as on-site security. There's also provisions for revocation of the CUP. There's no loitering, no transient activity. They have to comply with all the ABC and the city's alcoholic beverage regulations. They also have to have security cameras and meeting all the PD standards.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next part of this public hearing is going to go as follows. First, we'll have 15 minutes for the appellant to speak, and then we will have the appellees 15 minutes. Next, we'll have public comment in favor of the appeal, those that are opposed to the project, and then in opposition to the appeal, those that are in favor of the project. Then the appellee will go first with his rebuttal. He will have 5 minutes, and the appellant will also have 5 minutes for his rebuttal. And then we'll close the public hearing. So first, Mr. Delano.
Yes, thank you. Yes, and it is Everett Delano of Delano and Delano. Appreciate that. It's pronounced like the town. So I want to take just a couple minutes. I'm not going to take much time at all. You've certainly received, as staff pointed out, you received plenty of letters from me already, so you don't need any more. If you don't mind flipping to the next page. What I want to start with is just to let you know what's going to happen. You're going to hear from Will Rogers, principally an architect, who's going to talk a little bit about general plan and some other important issues. And then you're going to hear from a couple residents and community members of Concerned Citizens of Hemet who want to talk a little bit about some of their concerns, including some of the safety issues. What you've got here is just one of the pages from your own findings, if you flip to the next page. And I don't intend to go through these line by line, item by item, into the next page, please. I just want to show you that you have a substantial amount of authority. Indeed, you have an obligation pursuant to your municipal code to make the findings that are required. And indeed, that's one of the reasons why we believe the appeal should be granted and the project should be denied tonight, because it is indeed inconsistent with both your general plan and your municipal code, as the evidence will be discussed tonight and to talk about, and as my letters previously went over in a great detail, so I won't repeat those issues now. I do, however, want to point out one thing. Staff was just saying a moment ago that just comparing a question of census tract, and that is really not the applicable consideration. In this case, the consideration is really about in relation to the
In order to
project
evaluate current traffic operations, RK's reviewed the video that was taken in September 2017 during the traffic counts. To be noted
video we had this. There we go. All right. So anyway, as I was saying, there are several inconsistencies, and in that question is a question of overconcentration. Indeed, if you looked back to Resolution 14-019, which I included as an attachment to my to one of my letters on this, you'll notice on page 7, for example, there's a discussion. Although that resolution denied a Type 21 license, so that in that sense it may be different, but the reality is the resolution specifically talks about an overconcentration at roughly 2 to 1 within the city of Hemet of alcohol uses and alcohol's off sales. I also, as we've discussed in many letters and you'll hear from tonight, there's significant impacts associated with this project in a number of areas requiring an environmental impact report: air pollution, blight, urban decay, traffic. I want to get to that in just a moment. Community character and noise. There are expert consultant letters on those issues. You have comments from DTSC, from SCA QMD, both expressing concerns about the project and its impacts that have not been adequately addressed. There are environmental justice considerations and the new State Senate Bill 1000 that need to be addressed in this context. And last but not least, I want to just talk about process for a moment. It's kind of amazing to me. We had to sue the city of Hemet in order to be able to get several documents. Several documents were turned over by the city of Hemet after we filed the lawsuit, and the judges ordered additional documents to be reviewed that are being withheld. But what really surprises me in that context is the notion that at the same time that we had to beg and plead and fight and ultimately sue in order to get documents turned over, the flip side is that when my clients submit documents to the city, within a matter of minutes they're provided to the other side. And that's very obvious by the fact that the letter from Mr. Cooper references a document that was only submitted at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the day that he sent the letter. So with that, let's play this quick piece about the traffic impacts, and then Mr. Rogers will pick up after that.